All right, so far today we have gone over the test, the written test for Chapter 3, and I redid the hands-on test for you, and you'll get those back tomorrow. We're going to go over Chapter 4 today and also Chapter 5. Then tomorrow we will do a review. Tomorrow is what? Wednesday, so we will do a review of Chapter 4, and the rest of the period will be lab. Thursday, when you get in here, you will take the written test first thing. And after you've taken the written test, we're going to go over Chapter 6 as a class. All right? And we will even do a test review after that. Friday, then, we'll take a written test on Chapter 6, which means that next week, sometime, I don't know if it'll be Monday or Tuesday of next week, we will take their second hands-on test for Chapters 4, 5, and 6, but there won't be anything from Chapter 5. It'll be all on 4 and 6. Just like before, as we've been doing so far, your written tests are closed book, closed notes. Your hands-on tests, open book, open notes. Okay? So with that said, they were supposed to, they meaning the company that makes the, that allows me to use a vital source, was supposed to give me access to our current book, and I'll see if it did or not. So when I click here, see why I get a little frustrated once in a while? She sent me an email saying I had access to the book. That doesn't look like access to the book to me. All right, so I got to go back to the old copy. Now, the good news is, now, to my knowledge, everybody in the room now has the book, and that's a good thing. Right. I'll tell you what, let me open this. File. Open. And I want this. So, if you have your book with you, this is by far the heaviest chapter, so to speak, that we've had thus far. Okay? In this chapter, which starts in your book on page 135, it's called Visual Elements and Graphics. And we talk about several different things in here. That's what I want. You can open for me. There we go. All right. So again, I don't want to read these to you, but this is stuff that you will have to know for both your next written test and for your hands-on test. All right. You'll have to be able to create borders. Okay. We'll go over that in just a minute. We will go over different types of images. We will talk about the differences between GIFs and PNGs and JPEGs. That stuff will be on your next written test. All right, you will be required to add probably one of each types of graphics on for your next written test. All right, we'll talk about how to format it and some other things. We'll talk about how to optimize an image, how to set up backgrounds. So far, all we've done for backgrounds is set up the color. You may have gone out to a website before where instead of a color, they actually have an image for the background on the web page. All right, so if I was going to do for example, a web page on my granddaughter here, I might put that in there as a background image, that kind of thing. All right. It's not that. Come on. Okay, I don't want that one. All right. How to configure images as hyperlinks? You'll have to do that. How to do some stuff with CSS3. Now, the key thing to notice about CSS3 is CSS3 is the newest version of CSS, and the reason that's important is some of the stuff that they'll go on in here about with text shadow and opacity and gradients is not supported by all browsers, just so you're aware of that. We've talked about colors already. But if you look in there, it talks about RGBA and HSLA. RGB is red, green, blue. Anybody know what the A stands for? Alpha. All right. How about HSL? Anybody know what the HSL stands for? It's hue, saturation, and light. It's another way that you can set up colors, and we'll look at that. We'll look at the HTML5 caption element, which is, again, something fairly new in there. And you will have to create a caption element for your next test, all right, for your next hands-on test. We'll look at the meter and progress bars, all right. They talk about where to find some free graphic types of stuff. And then it ends, and it's kind of important because it talks about guidelines for graphics. And that is some pretty important stuff. Because basically, so far the stuff that we've done, the website that we created for the first hands-on test, for lack of better words, was kind of boring. It didn't have anything in it except for text. All right. It's very hard to get people to come out to a website and to keep coming back continuously when all you have in there is text. All right. You may or may not have done this, but I've noticed this before a lot of times in class. Somebody will bring their book in the first day in class, and sometimes it's even in shrink wrap first. They'll undo the shrink wrap, and they start going like this. When they're doing that, what are they typically doing? Yeah, how many pages there are, but they're checking out how many pictures there are. Because if there's a lot of pictures in it, that's less reading that they have to do. All right? And that's kind of the same kind of an idea behind putting pictures and graphics, images, etc. in a website. It breaks up all the text. All right? So again, this chapter is all on visual elements. Now the first thing that's in here, and I want you all, if you would please, to look up here. I'm going to come, here's that portfolio page. All right? And I'm in between these two paragraphs. It says, so it looks like this right now. I know you've all seen it already. But what I want to do is I want to add what's called a horizontal rule between this paragraph and this paragraph. Everybody understand? If you don't say, I don't know what that means, then let's look. So right between these two, I'm going to put in an HR. Not a BR, which is a line break, but an HR, which stands for horizontal rule. Now notice that when I open it, is that pretty obvious what that horizontal rule did? It put in this thing right here, that white line. All right? So it's expected that you'll understand what a horizontal rule is. Okay? All right. The next thing that's discussed in here. So they have you put that in as your first hands-on practice. I don't even think those are assigned anymore. But border and padding properties. The first thing they talk about is border style. Okay? Now, I want you to understand something. You don't have to look at me, but please listen to this. There are 5 ways you can do borders. You can do a border only on the top, which is border dash top. You can do a border just on the left, which is border dash left. One on the right, which is border dash right. One on the bottom, which is border dash bottom. Or just border, which puts all of it in there. Does that make sense? 99% of the time when you set up a border, it will be either border, which means everything, or border bottom. I don't ever remember a time where I used border left, border right, or even border top. I'm not saying there aren't times, but those are the way that almost always that it's done. The thicker that you make the border, all right, the thicker that is, the chunkier it's going to look. Does that make sense? All right, typically, a lot of times, even though they show a 3-pixel border in here, a lot of times you'll see just a 1-pixel border because it'll be enough. When you set up a border, all right, notice what they have if you look in the book right here. It says here, dash border, border width 3 pixels, border style. Everybody see this? You almost never write it like that. If you want to have a border, you would just say border, then a space, 3 pix, space, dash, space, pound 000033, like that. That's almost always how you see it. There is nothing wrong with doing this. All right? But this is 3 lines, that's 1 line. Most people like to minimize the amount of typing they do if they have a choice. All right, again, the way I do it, I put my curly on a line by itself, then this on a line by itself, then the ending curly. You don't have to do that. All right, you should be establishing your own style right now. And with a couple of you, and again, I'm just telling you this, I'm not taking off for this, but I've noticed with a couple of you, you're not doing a really good job of tabbing and lining stuff up. Just remember that one of the things that you're going to have to do at the end of this semester is to create an electronic portfolio which will have examples of your work. So if you put those examples out there and the stuff isn't lined up and it's kind of thrown all over the place on it, that's your perception, the perception of you that some people may end up having. All right, because not only will they go in and look at the way that your site looks, but they'll go back and do a view page source. All right, and if you got stuff kind of jumbled all over the page, that might be the way they remember you. We don't want that. All right. You'll notice if you look too here, there's a lot of different ways you can set up different properties. You can have dashed, you can have dotted. All right, you can have what are called grooved. Solid is the one that's used most often. All right, you can put double borders around. So there's a lot of different ways that you can set this up. All right, but you will have to take something, and put it in, for your next one. I do want to mention something. I probably didn't say this before. It just, boom, just came to my head. So I want to show you something. I'm going to grab this page that I've got right here, and I'm going to create a new page, and I'm going to paste it in. All right, and I'm going to throw out almost everything that's in here. So I don't even need a title because this is not a portfolio. All right, I'm not going to put a main in. I'm not going to put in anything. All right, I'm going to get rid of all this stuff. And I'm even going to break the rules I've told you about. I'm going to take my CSS and I'm going to put it right in here. And I'm going to put in style. And I'm going to say that every time I put a div in here, I want it to have a color. Now let's make it a background. A background of green, a height of 200 pixels, and a width of 200 pixels. All right, so why am I doing this? Well, I'm going to show you right now. I'm going to come in here, and in here I'm going to literally just put in a div with nothing in it, but I'm going to put in a couple blank lines afterwards. All right, I'm going to put in 3 of these. Three of them. All right, so why did I do that? So I'm going to call this junk.html. All right. Is that pretty obvious what I just did? Okay. Now I can come in if I want to, and you don't have to do this, but now I can come in here, and instead of putting in div like this, I can do this, div ID equal div1, div2, and div3. All right. Now I can come in here and I can say div1, comma, div2, comma, div3. All right. When I run this, it should look exactly the same as it did before. No, it's not. I don't know why. But let's see. Div1, div2, div3. Div1, div2, div3. I don't know what's wrong. Background green. That all looks okay.
The pound sign.
You are correct. Thank you. Pound div1, pound div2, pound div3. Thank you. But I'm going to cut these down in size to just 100. All right. And then run that. There they are. Now what I can do if I want to is I can come in, and with each one of these, now I can just sit there and just put in a div1. All right, and as they showed in the book, I can now come in here and I can say border 3 pixels dashed £, 0000033, like that. All right, now when I run this again, you can see how the first one's changed. So if you want to go in there and practice using any of this stuff, that's a real easy way to do it. That's all I wanted to show you. You say, well, that was a waste of time. Okay, then I'm sorry, I wasted 5 minutes of your time. All right? But you'll see that a lot, what people will do. What we're going to start doing as we get on in here is you're going to really start segregating your document out into different parts. And you might be working on a part of your document, and that part of your document, for some goofy reason, isn't working, and you can't figure out why. Then the best thing to do is to put a div around it and change the color of the div. All right, and start working with it that way. All right, and I'm just showing you, so I can do that. Then I can come in with my second one. And if I really want to start seeing the difference between this stuff, I can say, okay, now, for div 2, I want this to have a solid border, and I'm going to double the pixel size, and I'm going to just make this yellow, for example. And it didn't like the yellow, so, or solid, because it's not yellow. All right. Again, is that pretty obvious what I'm doing here? All right. Now that may not seem that important to you, but when we get to the next part of the chapter here, this, where they talk about the padding property, this is something you will have to understand as we go on in here. Margin and padding, and this is padding right now, are two of the most important concepts for you to be able to understand and comprehend when you are doing website design, period. All right? So it says padding configures the empty space between the content of the HTML, normally text, and the border. Now, it's so important that the author takes all of page 138 and all of page 139 to talk about different things that affect padding. All right? I want to show you one other thing. And again, I'm not trying to waste your time here. So if you think I am, sorry about that. But I'm going to type in here, CSS works by something that's called the box model. And I'm going to type in here red melon. All right? And I'm going to take for granted that you don't know what the box model is. So this is it. Everything that you create using CSS, everything is in a box. Each letter that you create is in its own box. Each paragraph is in its own box. Each page that you do is in its own box. All right? And the reason that that's important is, and what this is showing is, so this is the thing itself, your text or whatever. All right? Around that is what's called your padding. Around that is what's called your border. And around that is what's called the margin. All right? You don't see those unless you add margin and you add padding to whatever it is you're working with. This shows it in kind of a 3D look. Whoops. Where if I click right here, okay, it doesn't like it, what I'm trying to do. So here's two pictures. So here's one. So here's your content, and that's in that box. Around the box is the padding. Around the padding is the border. Around the border is the margin. Now let me do this. No. All right, this is supposed to be a 3D picture, but for whatever reason, it's not allowing me to use it as a 3D picture. All right? But it's something you're going to have to understand. So I would highly suggest that you go over and you look at pages 138 and 139. No. And the top of 140. No, you don't have to memorize any of them. But when you're taking the next hands-on test and you can't remember, for example, oh geez, how the heck do I do a background image? You can look on page 138 near the top of the page, and it'll show it to you. We will look at some of these throughout the chapter. All right, some of them are just not covered. All right. So what they do in here, if you have not noticed, is they keep working with the Trillium website that we had started on earlier. So the next hands-on practice, notice what they've done. Around their H1, they've added padding. All right. So instead of looking like this, it's in a bigger area. All right. The best way for you to learn and understand the differences between margin and padding is to go and do an exercise like this one. And then when you get done, change it from padding to margin. sometimes you won't see any difference. If there, I'll take your question in a second. If there's nothing around what you're working on, it may look the same whether you use margin or padding. If you really want to understand the differences between margin and padding, I'm going ahead a little bit. In Chapter 8 of your book, they talk about tables. All right? Create yourself a simple HTML table and then change the distance between the elements in the table. First do it using padding, then do it using margin. I can't think of a better way for you to learn the differences. Question?
Are the hands-on practices for Chapter 4 for a grade?
I don't remember if we have those assigned or not. I didn't think we did. I actually thought we didn't have any more of these assigned. So, complete all labs. Do the hands-on exercises. So that's all you have to do with the one at the ends of the chapter. Again, you don't have to do these Fish Creeks. Now, I'm giving you less homework this semester than I gave the class last year. I am strongly suggesting that you still go over the practices that are in the chapter. All right, I think that would really help you prepare for a test. If you say, I don't have the time, then don't do it. All right, that's your call. All right. So again, in here they have you work with Trillium. And so what I'm telling you is, this is the area by adding those 15 pixels of padding. And when you add padding and you just use the word padding, it adds top padding, right padding, bottom padding, and left padding. All right? And I don't want to insult your intelligence. You all know how to use a clock, even an old-fashioned, analog clock that looks like this. The reason I'm telling you this is when you do padding, there's many ways that you can do padding. If you just say padding, it does it all over, but you can say padding dash right, padding dash left, padding dash top, padding dash bottom, just so you know that. If you list the numbers out, so if I say 3 pixels, 5 pixels, 6 pixels, 8 pixels, as an example, it goes like a clock. So first you do the top, then you do the right, then you do the bottom, then you do the left. Does that make sense to everyone? Because you wouldn't believe the number of people who screw that up. All right? If that ever does bother you, you can do it. So in other words, if I said here, padding, colon, and then I had 3 picks, 5 picks, 6 picks, 8 picks, no commas, just a blank space between each one. That's like I said, padding right, 3 picks. I'm sorry, padding top, 3 picks, padding right, 5 picks, padding bottom, 6 picks, padding left, 8 picks. You have to understand that. Margin works exactly the same way. So when we get to that point, I don't have to say it to you. Just substitute the word margin for the word padding. And again, go back to those divs that I showed you. All right, and put margin in there and put padding in there. And you'll start to understand the differences between them. I used to spend a lot of time in class explaining the difference, and it was where I'd say, do you get it? Does everybody get it? And everybody be going like this. And really they were going like this. The only way that you will understand this stuff is to practice with it and play with it a little bit. All right, let's finish this section and then we'll take a break. All right. Now there's an FAQ on the bottom of the page. It says, my web page looks different in some browsers. What can I do? Well, the smart-ass answer is to never use IE, okay? Now, some of you have got IE, and I understand that. But your pages are going to look different in Internet Explorer, typically, than they will in any other browser, all right? I mean, if it was up to me, we'd have one browser, and it would be called Google Chrome. But that's just me, all right? To me, I never really had a problem doing anything with Chrome. And typically, IE, one thing IE has gotten better with is Edge is pretty good. All right, which is their newest version of IE. All right, but it says do not expect your web pages to look the same on every single browser. It's not going to happen. All right, so what I'm going to do is we're going to stop right here. I've got 9:06. Let's come back. Let's make it about 9:17 or so. Take about 10 minutes. We'll pick it up on section 4.2 on types of graphics. I'm just going to pause this because we're only 25 minutes in. I'll stop it anyway, that's fine.